When it comes to sleep quality and quantity, if you're someone who has struggled with either or both, then I'm almost willing to bet that you've at least heard or read the words cortisol and or melatonin. Now, interestingly, they've kind of become buzzwords, hot words in the health industry, but very few people actually know what they mean. So in today's video, I'm going to explain to you kind of what they do in a very general sense, so that you have a better understanding of how they impact your quality and quantity of sleep. Now, first up, we'll cover melatonin. Melatonin is kind of like the star of the show. And what's interesting is if I'm talking to somebody about quality and quantity of sleep and they've only heard of one of these two words, usually it's this one. And I think, this is just an opinion, but I think this has a lot to do with the fact that supplements for this are heavily marketed to consumers. So usually when I ask these individuals what melatonin does for them, the most common answer I get is it helps you fall asleep. And that's not the case. What it does do is it improves the quality of your sleep, which is arguably more important. And it's interesting to note that melatonin levels are elevated as it gets darker, as a reference to natural light. Now, cortisol has also earned itself somewhat of a bad reputation. Now, cortisol, in a sense, is kind of like a built-in coffee pot. It provides you with the energy and gusto to get up and get going first thing in the morning, and it contributes to your focus, your strength, and your overall vitality. Daytime exposure to sunlight elevates cortisol secretion. Now, this is important to note because melatonin secretion and cortisol secretion are inversely related. And what that means is that when melatonin levels are up, cortisol levels are down, and vice versa. Now, assuming you were to wake up in the morning, get adequate amounts of outdoor light exposure during the day, your cortisol levels would elevate in the morning, and then they would slowly begin to taper off as the day wore on. And then as it started to become dark, considering outdoor light, melatonin levels would begin to increase, contributing to improved quality and quantity of sleep. But what tends to happen, especially nowadays, is people stay indoors and they don't get adequate light exposure outdoors. And further, they get too much unnatural light exposure from overhead lights indoors as well as technology late into the evening. This is not something that our bodies or our brains are well adapted to, and as a byproduct, it almost flips the secretion of these hormones. And so what ends up happening is people start to feel this strange contradicting feeling of exhaustion but alertness when it's time for them to go to bed. And this is because that unnatural light exposure is not only inhibiting the production of their melatonin, but it's elevating the production of their cortisol. And as a byproduct, they feel energetic and focused and alert when they should feel tired and ready to wind down. And the hormone that's going to assist with the quality of sleep is much lower than it should be in optimal circumstance. So in an upcoming video, I'll go over some great tips and tricks that you can incorporate into your own life to improve this situation. But in general, what you want to be aware of is that during the day, you're getting that outdoor light exposure, preferably earlier in the morning. This will ensure that your cortisol levels are elevated at an optimal time of day, and further, come evening, you want to do your best to avoid unnatural light exposure to the best of your abilities. It's not always possible to do with 100% perfection, especially because nowadays we do rely on technology to a much greater degree than we ever have. But being aware that things like having a television in your bedroom or laying on your couch and texting well into the evening hours might not be the most progressive approach, and it could be compromising your melatonin secretion, which of course will compromise both the quality and the quantity of sleep that you inevitably get. If you happen to find this video informative, please make sure you subscribe or follow depending on what social media platform that you're seeing this on, and make sure to continue to send your questions and inquiries related to fitness, training, nutrition, and health my way, because a lot of these topics that you see me cover are based off of questions asked by individuals just like you.